I never thought $1 would change my life. That it was a Monday. One of those gray, miserable ones that already feel like they've overstayed their welcome by 8 a.m. I was running late for my shift at the cafe, dodging cars and glancing at my phone every 5 seconds. That's when I saw him. He was sitting outside the 7-Eleven near my apartment, curled up like a crumpled paper bag, wrapped in layers that hadn't been washed in what looked like months. A hood covered most of his face, but I could still see his eyes. Dull, distant, but alert, like he was watching the world, but not really in it. Everyone walked past him. Fast. Eyes forward. Like he was contagious. That I almost did the same. I really did, but something about the way he held his sign made me stop. It didn't say, "God bless." It didn't say, "Veteran." It just said, "I'm tired." That hit different. Not hungry. Not cold. Tired. I dug into my pocket, pulled out a crumpled $1, and dropped it into the cup by his side. He didn't look up. Didn't say thank you. Just nodded, barely. Like he was trying not to exist too loudly. That was it. I walked away, but for some reason, I kept thinking about him all day. That I thought about how I was tired. Tired of the way people looked at me when I walked into a room. Tired of pretending not to notice when a woman clutched her purse a little tighter because I'm a black man in a hoodie. Tired of working 2 jobs and still barely scraping by. But that man looked like he was tired in his bones. I didn't see him again for a few days. Maybe he'd moved on. Maybe someone helped him. Maybe he just disappeared like most people do when no one pays attention. But that Friday, he was there again. Same spot. Same sign. Only this time, it was raining. Not just a drizzle. A cold, spiteful rain that slices through your clothes like little needles. That I bought him a sandwich. Nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese. I didn't know if he'd like it. I didn't even know if he could eat solid food. But when I handed it to him, he finally looked at me. His eyes were green. Bright green, like spring grass after a storm. He looked at the sandwich, then at me. "You got a name?" he asked, voice rough like gravel and cigarettes. "Jordan," I said. He nodded. "I'm Sam." That was the first time I saw him smile. Just a little. Barely there. But real. I started seeing Sam more often after that. He never asked for anything. Never begged. Never gave me some sob story about how he ended up on the street. I didn't ask, either. I just brought him food when I could. Sometimes a blanket. Once, a pair of socks. It wasn't much, but he always looked me in the eye when I handed it to him. Like he saw me. Really saw me. And maybe that's why I kept going back. Because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. Then came the night everything changed. I was walking home after a late shift. It was past midnight, and the streets were dead. That eerie kind of quiet where every footstep echoes too loud. I turned the corner near the alley by 7-Eleven, the same one where Sam usually stayed. But he wasn't there. Instead, there were 2 guys. Drunk, loud, looking for trouble. I didn't even see them coming until one of them shoved me against the wall. "Got any cash, bro?" the taller one slurred. My heart pounded. I tried to stay calm. "Just take what you want," I said, pulling out my wallet. Wrong move. He hit me. Hard. Fist to jaw. My head bounced off the brick. I tasted blood. I dropped to my knees, dazed, trying to shield myself. Then I heard it, a roar. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. And out of nowhere, Sam was on them. Sam came out of nowhere. 1 second I was on my knees, blood in my mouth, 2 drunk assholes circling me like vultures. The next, I heard the sickening thud of a fist hitting flesh, followed by a grunt and the crash of someone falling hard onto the pavement. I looked up. Sam was standing over one of them, fists clenched, chest heaving. His hood had fallen back, revealing long, tangled hair soaked from the rain. His eyes, those strange, bright green eyes, were on fire. The second guy charged him. Mistake. Sam dodged like he'd done this before. Not clumsily. Not out of desperation. Smooth. Precise. He landed a punch straight to the guy's stomach, then an elbow to the neck that dropped him like a puppet with cut strings. The whole fight lasted maybe 15 seconds. But I just sat there, stunned, shaking, watching this man everyone ignored, everyone looked through, stand over two unconscious bodies like he had nothing left to lose. Then he looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I just nodded, still too dazed to believe what had just happened. Sam reached out a hand. I flinched, just a little, not because I didn't trust him, but because my body was still locked in fight or flight. He saw it. And he didn't take it personally. He just waited. I took his hand. He helped me up, steadying me as I wobbled like a baby deer. My vision was still a little blurry, but I could make out the blood on his knuckles. "You should get that looked at," I said, voice rasping. He shrugged. "I've had worse." We stood there for a moment, breathing heavy, rain falling between us. "You didn't have to do that," I said finally. Sam looked at me like I was crazy. "You gave me food. Socks. A name. That's more than most people have given me in 5 years. We didn't call the cops, neither of us wanted that kind of attention. I was black. Sam was homeless. We both knew how that script ended. So we left the guys where they lay and walked. I insisted on taking him back to my place. He tried to protest, said he was fine, but he was limping slightly and kept flexing his fingers like they hurt. "You saved my life," I said. "You're not sleeping in an alley tonight." He finally agreed. Mostly, I think, because he was too exhausted to argue. My apartment wasn't anything fancy, 1 bedroom, cracked tiles, heater that worked only when it felt like it, but it was warm, dry, and it didn't smell like urine and city exhaust. Sam stood in the doorway like he was afraid to step inside. Like the carpet might reject him. "Come on," I said. "You want tea? Coffee?" He blinked at me. "You got Earl Grey?" I laughed. "Seriously? Man's gotta have standards." I found a box of dusty Earl Grey I didn't even know I owned and made him a cup. We sat in silence for a while. He sipped slowly, cradling the mug in both hands like it was a precious thing. "You fought like you were trained," I said eventually. He didn't answer right away. "I was," he said. "Army. 8 years. Before all this." I nodded. Didn't press. People don't end up on the streets because of one bad decision. It's 1,000 little cracks in the dam until the water breaks through. He stayed on my couch that night. I gave him clean clothes, old sweats I didn't wear anymore, and he slept like a rock, snoring softly under a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and fabric softener. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Would I have ended up in the hospital? Would I have ended up dead? And how crazy was it that the man everyone avoided, the one people crossed the street to avoid, was the only person who actually showed up. The next morning, he made breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs, toast, even cut up some fruit I forgot I had. I walked into the kitchen, still groggy, and saw him humming some old song I didn't recognize. "You didn't have to do all this," I said. He smiled. "Least I could do." I paused. "What are you gonna do now?" He looked out the window, distant again. "Don't know," he said. "But it's been a long time since I felt like a human being. So, thanks for that." And that was when I made a decision I didn't fully understand yet. I told him he could stay. Not forever. But until he figured things out. I said I had a friend who ran a shelter, could maybe help him get back on his feet. Sam just stared at me for a long moment. Then, for the first time since I met him, I saw tears in his eyes. I forgot what kindness feels like, he whispered. Having Sam in my apartment felt weird. Not in a bad way. Just different. Like I'd rearranged my furniture and kept bumping into the coffee table. At first, it was little things. He folded the blankets perfectly every morning, like he was still in the army. He washed every dish after he used it, even mine. He spoke softly, walked quietly, and never sat until I told him to. I told him he didn't have to do all that. You live here now. You're not a guest. He smiled, but I could see it didn't sink in. Somewhere in his mind, he was still temporary. Still disposable. A few days later, I came home from work and found him sitting on the couch, staring at the TV. It wasn't on. He was just staring. You good? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Just thinking. About what? He looked up at me. About how fast you can lose everything. One day, I had a wife. A house. A dog that barked too much. Then my mom died. Then the drinking started. Then the fights. Then the divorce. Then the pills. Then the streets. I didn't know what to say. So I just sat next to him. Sometimes silence says more than words. It wasn't all heavy. Some days, we laughed. Sam had stories, crazy, wild stories from his army days. Once, he got stranded in the wrong city because he fell asleep on the wrong bus after a night of drinking. Another time, he talked a superior officer out of a fight using only knock-knock jokes. The man had layers. But the world didn't want to see them. The problem started the second my neighbors noticed him. First, it was the lady downstairs, Mrs. Greeley. Always walking her little white dog like she owned the entire block. She saw Sam taking out the trash for me and practically leapt backward like he was radioactive. Next came Mr. Kwan from 2B. He asked me in the hallway if everything was all right at home. Then the landlord showed up. Just a heads up, he said, fake casual, we've had complaints. Some people said there's a vagrant hanging around. He's not a vagrant, I snapped. His name is Sam. He's my friend. He saved my life. The landlord gave me that look, the one people give you when they've already decided what kind of person you are, and now they're just trying to pretend they're being reasonable. Well, just keep it in mind, he said, before walking off. I clenched my fists. Not because of what he said. But because of what he didn't say. That night, I told Sam what happened. He wasn't surprised. I've gotten that look before, he said. Hundreds of times. From cops. From cashiers. From people sitting across from me on the train. He leaned back, hands behind his head. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. But I could tell he wasn't. I started noticing more things. A woman clutched her purse tighter when we walked down the street together. A cashier asked him to leave the store while I was grabbing something inside. A man muttered the word junkie under his breath as we passed. Every time, Sam just kept walking. I asked him once, doesn't it piss you off? He looked at me, calm. Of course it does. But if I fought every battle, I wouldn't have anything left. That hit me. Because I realized I could fight. I still had energy. And I wasn't going to waste it being quiet. A week later, I talked to my friend at the shelter. They had a spot open in a transitional housing program. Not perfect, but it was something. A real bed. Hot meals. Job placement help. I told Sam about it over breakfast. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You trying to get rid of me?" It stung. "No," I said. "I'm trying to help you get back up. I don't want you on my couch. I want you on your feet." He nodded. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone who wasn't used to trusting good things. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." That weekend, we packed a small duffel bag with his things. Which, honestly, wasn't much. A pair of jeans. A hoodie. Some toiletries I'd bought him. And that same Earl Grey tea he never stopped drinking. When I dropped him off at the shelter, he turned to me. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You already did," I told him. That night in the alley. We hugged. And then he walked in. For the first time in years, Sam had a roof over his head that wasn't cardboard or concrete. I thought that was the end of the story. I didn't know it was just the beginning. The first week without Sam in the apartment felt quiet. Not peaceful. Just hollow. It's strange how fast you get used to someone's presence, the sound of them shuffling in the kitchen, the soft hum of them watching TV late at night, the way they exist in your space without taking it over. I hadn't realized how much space Sam filled, not physically, but emotionally, until he wasn't there. I kept expecting to see him sitting on the couch when I came home from work, sipping tea and telling me some ridiculous story about the military or asking if I had any more peanut butter crackers. But the couch stayed empty. And the silence stayed loud. We texted a few times. Sam wasn't much for phones, he said he never liked typing conversations, but he always responded. Mostly updates. Started kitchen duty at the shelter. Got a job interview tomorrow. They found me a social worker. She's cool. Each message was like a small heartbeat, letting me know he was still out there, still trying, still fighting. I kept telling him I was proud of him. He always replied with a simple "Thanks, man." But under that thank you, I could feel the weight of everything he was carrying. Then one day, about 3 weeks after he moved into the shelter, I got a call. I almost didn't answer, it was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to pick up. It was Sam. His voice was strained, like he was holding something in, but couldn't anymore. "They let me go," he said. "What? Who?" "The job. The restaurant. Manager found out I had a record. Said corporate wouldn't be comfortable with me around the cash register." I was quiet for a moment, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was trying not to explode. "You told them up front, right?" "Yeah. Was honest from day one. They said it was fine. Until it wasn't." I could hear it in his voice, that familiar drop. That weight returning. That feeling of being told, again, "You don't belong here." "Come over," I said. "Let's talk." He hesitated, then said, "You sure?" "Always." That night, Sam sat on my couch again, just like old times. But something was different. His shoulders were heavier. His face was tighter. Like he was bracing for something. I made us tea, yes, Earl Grey, and we sat in silence for a bit, letting the steam rise between us like fog from old wounds. "I really thought I was making it this time," he said finally. "Thought maybe I was past the worst of it." "You are," I said. "This isn't a step backward. It's just a detour." He let out a bitter laugh. "Man, people love a comeback story, as long as it's on Netflix. In real life, they don't want to see you win. They want to feel good for giving you a shot, but the second you remind them of who you were, it's over." I didn't argue. Because I knew he was right. The world wants to feel generous, not responsible. They'll hand you a second chance like a used coffee cup, as long as you don't spill anything on their shoes. I wanted to fight for him. To march into that restaurant and ask the manager what kind of coward throws away a man just for having a past. But I knew that wasn't what Sam needed. He didn't need me to fight battles he'd already fought 100 times before. He just needed someone who would stay. So I stayed. I listened. I told him he could crash on my couch again if he needed to. But he shook his head. No. I'm not going backward. I can't. If I give up now, I'm not coming back again. There was steel in his voice. Not anger. Not pride. Just survival. The next day, he applied for a warehouse job. Not glamorous, not permanent, but it paid and it didn't ask too many questions. He got it. Started working nights. I barely saw him after that, but every so often he'd stop by, leave a tea box on my doorstep, or a note scribbled on the back of a receipt. Still breathing. Hope you are too. But not everyone in my building was thrilled. The landlord cornered me again one afternoon. Jordan, I really need to ask, is that guy back? Looked him in the eye. His name is Sam. And no, he's not back. He's working. He's trying. Something you clearly wouldn't understand. He raised his hands like I'd pulled a gun on him. Hey, I'm just saying, people talk. And if someone files a formal complaint, I didn't let him finish. You know what? I said, voice steady. Let them complain. I'd rather live next to someone who's been through hell and still shows up than someone who's afraid of shadows in their perfect little hallway. I walked off before he could say anything else. Because I didn't need his approval. I knew who Sam was. And I knew that someday, the world would too. The night it happened started like any other. I just finished closing up at the cafe. It had been a long shift, customers were rude, the espresso machine had broken halfway through the day, and my manager had decided that my 10-minute break was too long. I was exhausted, hungry, and just wanted to get home, throw on some old hoodie, and lose myself in bad TV. I didn't know that by the end of the night, I'd be bleeding in the street. It was just past midnight when I turned the corner onto my block. The city felt quieter than usual, that eerie kind of silence that presses on your skin. I walked a little faster, keys clutched between my fingers like they could protect me. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cities are noisy. People walk at night. Nothing new. But the steps matched my rhythm. When I slowed, they slowed. When I turned down the next street, not my usual route, but a little shortcut I sometimes took, they followed. My stomach tightened. I turned my head slightly. A man. Maybe late 30s. Hoodie up. Face shadowed. I crossed the street so did he. I felt my pulse spike. I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid, just overthinking. But there was something off in his gait. Something too casual to be innocent. I was halfway down the block when I heard him pick up speed. Then I felt it, a hand grabbing my shoulder, yanking me back so hard I nearly fell. I spun, instinct taking over, but he was faster. His fist connected with my side, knocking the air out of my lungs. I staggered, dropped my bag, tried to scream, but no sound came out. Wallet, he barked. I reached for it, dizzy, gasping, trying to stay calm. Then I saw the knife. It wasn't big, maybe 5 inches, cheap steel, but it glinted under the street lamp like it wanted blood. Now. My hands shook as I fumbled with my wallet. I felt heat rising in my chest, not just fear, but fury. Not again. Not again. And then I heard a voice. Low. Calm. Dangerous. You need to walk away. Right now. The mugger turned, startled. Sam stepped out of the shadows, slowly, like something out of a dream, or a nightmare, depending on who you were. His hoodie was up, but I recognized his posture, the quiet tension in his shoulders, the way his fists flexed like they already knew the rhythm of violence. This doesn't concern you, the man snapped, blade twitching in his hand. Sam took one step closer. It does now. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the mugger lunged. Sam was faster. He didn't just dodge, he moved like he'd seen it coming 5 seconds before it happened. He grabbed the attacker's wrist mid-swing, twisted hard, and slammed his knee into the man's chest. The knife clattered to the pavement. Another punch, short, brutal, surgical, and the guy hit the ground, groaning. Sam stood over him, breathing hard, fists still clenched. "You okay?" he asked without looking back at me. I was leaning against the wall, heart pounding, legs weak. I nodded, barely able to speak. Sam reached down, picked up the knife, and kicked it out of reach. Then he grabbed my bag, walked over, and handed it to me like we were just leaving a movie together. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you home." We didn't talk much on the walk back. I think we were both riding the aftershock, that weird adrenaline crash that comes after danger, where everything feels like it's moving in slow motion. My hands were still shaking. Inside my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch. Sam stood in the doorway for a minute, like he wasn't sure if he should stay. "Sit down," I said. "Please." He did. I looked at him, really looked at him. The scar near his eye. The bruises on his knuckles from the last fight that had barely healed. The calm in his eyes, even after what just happened. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "I know. Why do you keep doing this for me?" He looked down at his hands. "Because you saw me when no one else would. Because you reminded me I'm still human." I didn't have a response. My throat tightened. I felt something hot behind my eyes, but I blinked it away. We just sat there. Two broken men in a world that didn't care much for the cracks. Later that night, after Sam had fallen asleep on the couch, I stood in the kitchen and just stared out the window. I thought about what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Again. I thought about how many people like Sam were walking around invisible, full of history, full of pain, full of potential, while the world turned its back on them. And I thought about how, somehow, in a city full of noise, I had heard him. And he had heard me. A week passed after the night Sam saved my life for the second time. He didn't talk about it much. Neither did I. It was one of those things that didn't need to be dissected, not because it wasn't important, but because speaking about it too directly would almost cheapen what had happened. It was bigger than words. He had been there. Again. When no one else was. And I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before: I owed him more than gratitude. I owed him dignity. We sat in the park that Saturday, sharing a greasy paper bag of fries and watching pigeons fight over breadcrumbs like tiny feathered warriors. It was sunny for once, not hot, just warm enough to make you forget how cold life could be. Sam looked better. His eyes weren't as hollow. His posture wasn't as tense. And there was this peace about him, like he had finally allowed himself to exhale after years of holding his breath. "You ever think about going home?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. "Then, don't know if I have a home left." "You got this city." He smirked. "Yeah. And she's got sharp elbows." We both laughed, and I realized how rare it was to hear that sound from him. Laughter. Unforced. Unafraid. Later that day, he told me he had an interview for a maintenance position at a community center. The pay wasn't great, but it came with housing, a small studio in the back, enough to sleep and cook and not feel like a guest in someone else's world. "They said they're giving me a real shot," he said. "Not a favor. A job." And I knew that mattered to him more than anything. He didn't want handouts. He wanted purpose. When the day came, I walked with him to the interview. Not because he needed me, but because I needed to see it. I needed to witness the man who used to sleep outside a 7-Eleven walk through the front doors of a building where people were going to trust him. He wore a clean shirt, pressed pants, and those same scuffed boots he'd had since I met him, the ones that had seen alleys, shelters, hospitals, and now maybe, redemption. He got the job. That evening, we sat in my apartment, probably for the last time, drinking tea and letting the moment settle between us like dust in a quiet room. "I don't know how to say thank you for everything," he said. "You don't have to," I replied. But he looked at me with those green eyes of his, the ones that used to be tired, but now held something new. Something strong. "I need to say it. Because you didn't just help me. You believed me. And that's a kind of healing I didn't think I deserved." I swallowed hard. "You deserved it before you ever met me." He gave a small nod. "Maybe. But I didn't know that until now." The next morning, Sam packed the duffel bag again, the same one he'd brought into my home what felt like a lifetime ago. Only this time, it wasn't heavy with shame or survival. It was light. Intentional. He stood at the door for a long second, as if listening for something. Then he turned to me and said, "You ever need me, call. Doesn't matter when." I smiled. "You still got that burner phone I gave you?" He held it up and shook it with mock seriousness. "She's ancient, but loyal." We both laughed. And then, without fanfare, without drama, he opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and walked away. Like a man who knew who he was. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't given him that first $1. If I had walked past him like everyone else did. If I hadn't stopped that rainy day and said, "You want turkey and cheese?" But then I remember, it wasn't about the sandwich. Or the socks. Or the couch. It was about seeing him. And being seen in return. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in slightly crooked print. Inside was a photo. Sam, standing in front of the community center, wearing a navy work shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. He was smiling. Really smiling. On the back, he'd written 4 words, "Still breathing." "Thank you."